You can tell me the Bearcats made progress this season, but the fallout from Saturday's loss to number 1 Houston is ugly.
You are Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And here we go. Thank you so much for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen of every day. It's free and available everywhere that you get your podcasts, including right here on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to our Locked On Bearcats YouTube channel and follow it to get an alert every time we drop a new episode. My name is Alex Frank, your host each and every day here on Locked On Bearcats. We are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Monday of tournament week. I'm fired up. I wish the Bearcats were in the NCAA tournament, as do all of you. But the fallout from Saturday's game, watching that game on Saturday between the Bearcats and Houston, you know what it felt like? And I tweeted this during the game. It felt like watching the old Bengals against the Steelers. Houston is in the Bearcats' heads. You cannot come away from that game not thinking that. That was my biggest takeaway from the game. Houston could do whatever they want and get away with it, and the Bearcats could do nothing about it. Watch the Bearcats' body language in that game. Watch Landers Nolly. Watch Victor Locken. Watch anyone on that team. Their body language was horrible because it was like they couldn't do anything. Well, yeah, you could have. You could have been a little more assertive. You could have done, what Houston did. Houston lost their best player on Saturday, Marcus Sasser. And what did they do? They responded. They responded with one of their best performances of the season. They beat Cincinnati by 21. The Bearcats played Houston tough in the 2 games in the regular season. Saturday felt like the complete opposite of that. That game was never close. That game was never in question. That game was never going to be there for the Bearcats taking. Houston stomped on their throats from the opening tip, and the Bearcats could do nothing about it. For the 3rd consecutive year, the Bearcats season ends at the hands of Houston. It sucks. To watch that game on Saturday, 13 made shots. Are you kidding me? 13 made shots. I mean, just to tell you how bad it was, Landers Nolly led the Bearcats in scoring with 14 points, but he was 3 of 13 from the floor. David DeJulius was 1 of 10. More on him in a minute. Dan Skillings Jr., 2 of 7. Micah Adams-Woods, 2 of 6. Odio Guama only took 3 shots. Really don't understand that. He did have 9 rebounds, only scored 7 points. The Bearcats were out-rebounded 44-32. Houston shot 50.9% from the floor. By the way, they only made 3 threes. Bearcats were 16 of 28 from the line. Not like that would have helped. Houston had 38 points in the paint. Bearcats had 12. 12 points in the paint. The Bearcats had fewer points in the paint than made shots. And it really shouldn't be that close. I say that because it really shouldn't be that close. But again, you watch that game. Houston was doing anything they wanted to against Cincinnati. They were a little more physical. They were a little more aggressive. And they knew they could do it. Remember the old Bengals-Steelers games? And the game that I go back to in that rivalry, more on that actually later on in the show, consider that a tease. But Cincinnati stood no chance on Saturday. Cincinnati stood no chance on Saturday to beat the number 1 team in the country. I thought they had a good chance of doing it. Full disclosure. They had just played maybe their best game of the season against a really good Temple team. They beat them by 30. Houston was only up by 2 against East Carolina at halftime. And they came out on Saturday like that game had never been played. And what sucks is I've seen teams this season, like UCF, USF. Temple went into Houston and beat them. I saw teams come closer to beating Houston than Cincinnati. The Cincinnati Bearcats embarrassed themselves on Saturday. If they had lost that game 69-58, okay, that's one thing. But they lost 69-48. They couldn't hit a free throw. They couldn't hit a shot. 13 of 51. 13 of 51. That means they scored fewer points than they took shots. I mean, that's how bad the performance was. This is a team that just a few years ago, with Gary Clark and Jaron Cumberland in back-to-back conference championship games beat Houston. Heck, Jaron Cumberland took them to the woodshed in the 2019 championship game in Memphis. I was at that game. I called that game for Bearcast Media. Jaron Cumberland with the famous "shh" to Houston's band. He scored 33 points in that game. Cincinnati won. They've only beaten Houston one time since then. Once. They've lost 9 straight. They can't even compete with them. Like, you thought after 2020 that Cincinnati-Houston was going to be a rivalry in the American. It's been anything but that. These two teams, it's non-competitive when these two teams get together. Cincinnati and Houston. And, there are so many reasons why the Bearcats lost this game. The body language on the Bearcats was terrible, and it was evident from the first 5 minutes. Houston's best player left the game. That didn't matter. The Bearcats looked passive. They looked like they weren't ready to play. We know Houston's really good. But I saw ECU give them everything they could handle in the quarterfinals. And that ECU team is not very good, even though they did beat the Bearcats. In a semifinal game, you come out as unprepared as the Bearcats did, it's embarrassing. Lacking identity, just kind of flying by the seat of your pants, letting the opponent establish, and then oops, you're down by however many points. And that has happened over and over and over again this season in big games. Look at every big game this season. Arizona. Oh, hey, they scored 63 points in the second half. Yeah, they were also down double digits in the first half. Oh, hey, they tied the game late against Xavier, and if it had not been for Xavier's best player, they would have maybe won, gotten that last defensive stop. Do you remember they were down 13-1 in the first half? Oh, hey, they played Houston tough in those two games. Do you remember the slow start they got off to in the first game? Oh, and against Memphis, the slow starts they got off to in both games. Remember that? Oh, but they what? Slow starts. It kills me to watch this team in big games because they come out and they let the opponent do whatever they want, and then they settle in. No, you can't do that. Did Jaron Cumberland and Mick Cronin and those Bearcats in 2019, did they do that against Houston in the championship game? Heck no. Did they do that in 2018 against Houston in the championship game? No. In fact, they were up 10-2 to start that game. Did they do that in any other game against Houston? No. Because they had the alpha dogs on this team. And David DeJulius. We talk about David DeJulius and his legacy and how he's one of the most distinctive Bearcats to ever put on a uniform. You know what I saw from David DeJulius on Saturday? Nothing. I didn't see any creativity. I didn't see any big shots made. I saw a guy who lacked confidence. I saw a guy who shrunk in the biggest... I think it shrunk. I'm having a major... Anyway, he was not at all where he needed to be. I think it shrank. He shrank. Why did I say shrunk? He shrank on the biggest stage. Semifinals against Houston. If he's one of the top 25 Bearcats of all time, he would have stepped up. If he steps up and the Bearcats lose by 6, so what? 7 points. 7 points. 7. Here's a guy who scored 30 points on his senior day just over a week ago. Less than a week ago. 7 points against Houston. What does that say about him? Yes, he's a good player. Yes, I'm going to remember what he did to stabilize the program at a time when it needed to be stable. But let's be honest. He was never a guy who was going to elevate the team. He never was. He never was that guy. Landers Nolley was not either. This team did not have a guy who could elevate them in big games. Jaron Cumberland is that. Gary Clark is that. Troy Copain is that. Not the players that are on this team. Trey Scott, you could even say, was that. But Landers Nolley and David DeJulius, stabilizing players, not program elevators. And that is why the Bearcats lost on Saturday in the fashion in which they did. Yes, the Bearcats were good, and they made improvements from last year, but they would shrink in big games. Coming up, I'm going to put this loss into perspective in multiple ways. I'll do that after I tell you how this episode of Locked On Bearcats is brought to you by Built Bar. It is the best time of the year. It is March Madness. The Built March Madness bracket is here. We know you have a favorite bar or puff, and now's your time to make it count. Go to builtmarchmadness.com to vote for your favorites. You know I will be voting for the cookie dough chunk puff. I'll be voting for the cookie dough chunk puff. And if you want, let's say, the Kansas Jayhawks or the Arizona Wildcats or the Purdue Boilermakers to win, we obviously want the Cincinnati Bearcats to win, but they're not in the tournament, to win, then you'll be voting for that bar too. Support your team, support your bar or puff. And I just named those teams because I have them winning my March Madness brackets. And when you vote for your favorite bar or puff, you will be entered into a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners, how about that for an alliteration, will get a free box of Built. Not only that, but one Locked On fan will win a 12-month subscription to Built to have Built's best bars or puffs delivered monthly straight to your door. You gotta try Built. Built, the best protein bar ever. Seriously, they're so amazing. You won't think they're good for you because, for starters, they're all high in protein, low in sugar, and covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. Run to builtmarchmadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff and pick up a box while you're there. You can vote every day in March, so hop in and support your pick. Grab your bracket and go listen to the Locked On College Basketball Bracket Breakdown with national analysis and the insights from our local experts. The Locked On College Basketball Bracket Breakdown has everything you need to make the most informed decisions on your bracket. Find the episode on Locked On College Basketball wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Alex Frank back with you, your host of Locked On Bearcats, each and every day. The NCAA tournament begins tomorrow night at UD Arena. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to being on press row in Columbus Nationwide Arena. We got some great matchups in Columbus on Friday. More on that at the end of the show. But I want to ask you a question. Speaking of Columbus, if someone had come up to me, or if I had asked you on March 22nd, 2019, if I had asked you, or if I had told you that the Cincinnati Bearcats would not make the NCAA tournament again until at least 2024, if you had told me that, I would have batted an eye at you. If I had told you that, you probably wouldn't believe me. And think about where the program was at the time. Samari Curtis was committed. They had Jaron Cumberland. You didn't know if he was going to come back for a senior year at the time. They had emerging players in Keith Williams, Trey Scott, Nasir Brooks. They had Mick Cronin, 9 straight NCAA tournament appearances, 9 straight. One of only 6 programs in the country to have accomplished that feat at the time. If you had told me the Bearcats were going to miss the tournament for the next 4 years, obviously everybody did because of COVID in 2020, I would have said, huh? And not only that, but the program would undergo not 1, but 2 coaching changes. I could have believed 1, but 2? No. But that's exactly what's happened. And this program is not where it was in 2019. In 2019, there was stability, there was continuity, there was the sense of certainty that the regular season was the journey to the tourney. And now the regular season matters because as soon as they lose one game, you start realizing, yeah, maybe this team is not an NCAA tournament worthy. Bearcats started 3-0 this season, then they lose to NKU. Then they lose 2 games in Maui. And by the time you had your Thanksgiving dinner, you knew the Bearcats were probably not even going to go to the NCAA tournament. And that's a painful feeling to have. But the Cincinnati Bearcats, ladies and gentlemen, since March 22nd of 2019, I'm going to put it into perspective. What has happened to the program and what has happened to other programs around the country that relate to the Cincinnati Bearcats. Think about where the program is now. Consider where NKU is now. NKU in 2019 had made their second tournament appearance in 4 seasons. John Brandon had wild success there. Regular season champs in 2018, conference tournament champions in 2017 and 2019. What has NKU done since then? You probably didn't even care who they hired because you were so happy the Bearcats hired John Brandon. Well, they hired a head coach named Darren Horn. Want to know what he's done since then? 3 championship game appearances and 2 Horizon League championships. They're going to the NCAA tournament this year. They'll be a 16 seed playing Houston on, Thursday in Birmingham. Good luck to the Norse. I do mean that seriously, good luck. But it's going to be a battle for them. But again, seriously, good luck to the Norse. Really, I keep saying it. I feel like I keep saying this in a condescending way. I really hope the Norse do well because they are a great program. They have had success since John Brennan left. And John Brennan, you don't even know where he is. UCLA hires Mick Cronin. Year one, you laugh at how they started that season. I think they were like 8-8. Yeah, they finished with the regular season championship. Year two, they're in the Final Four. Something Mick Cronin never accomplished at Cincinnati. Mick Cronin didn't even get to the Elite Eight, let alone the Final Four. And by the way, he was a miracle shot away at a national championship. Year two, back in this or year three, back in the Sweet 16 last year with UCLA. Year four remains to be seen. They were 2 seed on Thursday. It's either Thursday. Yeah, Thursday in Sacramento. Good luck to UCLA and Mick Cronin. They take on UNC Asheville in the first round in Sacramento. Xavier, crosstown rivals. They've undergone 2 head coaching changes since 2018, but they're not back in the tournament. First year under Sean Miller. Now, it's his second stint, but still, top 20 team in your first season, you're doing something right. And then Houston, top 20 team last 4 seasons. They've gotten better since COVID-19. Look around the country and look at programs that have come out on the wrong side of COVID-19 and look at programs who have come out on the right side. Houston has gotten better every single year since COVID-19. They were a Final Four team in the first year post-COVID. They were an Elite Eight team last year, and they're a number 1 seed this year against NKU in the first round on Thursday. So they are a consistent program. Look at Memphis. Remember how much fun it was to poke fun at Memphis in 2020? Penny Hardaway, James Wiseman, Precious Achiuwa, all those 5-star, 4-star recruits. You know what they've done every year since 2020? They've gotten better. They won the NIT in 2021. They went to the tournament last year and nearly took down Gonzaga in the second round. And then this year, they are in Columbus on Friday. Looking forward to seeing them. They're an 8 seed, and they have a real chance to not only knock off Florida Atlantic in the first round, but give Purdue a serious battle on Sunday in Columbus. That's what the matchup turns out to be. So we look at what those programs have done. And then here are the Bearcats. Well, they're just here. We know their history. Wes Miller knows it. You don't feel like you're a part of that now. They have not had an alpha dog in the last 3 years since Jaron Cumberland left. There are programs who have not come out of COVID on the right side. I would make a case for Cincinnati absolutely being one of them. I mean, they are not a relevant program. They're not relevant in the American, they were not relevant in the American because now they're on to the Big 12. But on a national level, they're certainly not. They aren't even on anybody's radar to make the tournament. By the time February rolls around, they're not in that conversation that they were in 2020. And that was fun to go down the stretch and know the Bearcats had to win every game more than likely to make the tournament. It was fun in 2019, wondering how good they could be and how they could boost their seeding, which ultimately landed at 7 right here in Columbus. It was fun in 2018, wondering if they could get that number 1 seed. They were realistically going to be a 2 or 3, and they were a 2 seed that year. It was fun, and I miss that. But think about where the Bearcat program is right now. It's not where NKU is. It's not where Xavier is. Xavier, the last 2 seasons, they had opportunities to get in the tournament. They didn't, but still, they were playing competitive games. And then you look at Houston, and you look at Memphis, and you look at other programs around you. Purdue came out of COVID-19 pretty good. Michigan, outside of this year, they had a down year last year too, but still went to the Sweet 16. I mean, you look at these programs. Kent State's going back to the tournament this year. You look at these programs who have been good historically, and they're still good now. Duke being one of them. Gonzaga, I mean, they've been 1 and 3 seeds 3 years post-COVID. And the Bearcats are a very good program. But they are certainly not near that right now. And that's when you think about Saturday. They can't even compete against Houston. Friday, they had their largest conference tournament win since ever. besting a 27-point win in 97 against St. Louis. Now they can't even compete with Houston. 11 years ago, they beat the number 2 team in the country in Madison Square Garden. Now they can't even compete with the number 1 team in a half-empty arena? That's where the program's at right now. If you had told me that 4 years ago, or if I had told you that 4 years ago, it probably wouldn't have been believed. But that's where we are right now. That is where we are with this program. And it really does suck. Coming up, the Bearcats are going into the Big 12. That's great. But I'll explain the but after the break, and I'll explain what I missed the most about Selection Sunday. But first, I got to tell you how this episode of Locked On Bearcats is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back. If your first bet doesn't win, just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockdown. That's FanDuel.com/lockdown to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Back here on Locked On Bearcats, wrapping things up here on the Monday of tournament week. Alex Frank with you, your host each and every day. So the Bearcats are going to the Big 12. Like, they're now off to the Big 12. Every game in football and men's basketball has been played. Baseball's still happening, but in my mind, I'm in Big 12 mode. But the Cincinnati Bearcats, keep in mind, Houston's going to the Big 12 too. They're not going away. So just because you can't beat them right now, I mean, it's not like, you're going and they're not. They are coming with you. Houston right now could beat any team in the Big 12 because they play a style of play that is conducive to the Big 12. They're physical. They can make shots. They spread the ball around. It's amazing that they broke through in 2019. They won the regular season. They went to the Sweet 16. It's amazing that they built off that. They went to the Final Four in 21. They went to the Elite Eight last year. And they could very easily not only win or go to the Final Four this year, but they could win the national championship. That's how good of a team they are. But what's unbelievable to me is Cincinnati can still not compete with them. 9 straight losses. 9 straight losses to Houston and Memphis. 9 straight losses to Houston. You've lost to Memphis, 5 straight times? So 14 consecutive losses to the Cougars and Tigers. Now, Memphis is not going to the Big 12. Congratulations to them, by the way. They won the American. Looking forward to seeing how they do in the tournament. Really, really, say what you will about Penny Hardaway, but like I said, they've gotten better as the season has worn on. And again, going back to that question I asked you earlier about if you had told me or I had told you on March 22nd, 2019, when the buzzer sounded against Iowa in that first round game, that the Bearcats would miss the tournament for at least the next 4 seasons, maybe even 2024. That would have been crazy to think about. But you know what I miss about Selection Sunday is your team being a part of it. Your school, your name being called, wondering where you're going to go, being a part of the jubilation, who you're going to play. And for the Bearcats, because sometimes they'd lose in the first round, you cared about who you played in the first round. Well, you cared about it. I know I did. Because this is a program that is perennially an NCAA tournament team. And they've missed it the last 4 years. Now, obviously 2020, everybody did, so it's really 3. But this is it is so frustrating to think about. You're not a part of seeing teams like Marquette and Memphis and Purdue or any other team. And you wish you weren't. And it sucks. And, obviously you hope to be a part of that next year. But, right now, I don't know when we will see that again. So the tournament bracket's out. Local teams, obviously, NKU, really happy for them winning the Horizon League. Good luck to them. On Thursdays, they take on Houston in the first round. Xavier is going to, I believe, Greensboro? Yeah, to play Kennesaw State. First tournament appearance, by the way, for Kennesaw State. Really happy for them. So that'll be interesting to see. You've got Purdue as the number 1 seed. Indiana's a 4 seed. Really happy for them. You've got, here's my thing about the tournament. You can look at Joe Lunardi's bracketology. You can look at Jerry Palm. You can look at Mike DeCourcy. You can look at any bracketology out there. The selection committee always throws curveballs at you. Texas A&M is not a 7 seed. Houston is also not a better number 1 seed than Kansas. I'm sorry, they're not. The game's in Columbus on Friday. You've got Purdue versus the winner of Texas Southern and Fairleigh Dickinson. Texas Southern went 14-20 and are in the NCAA tournament because they won their conference tournament. And they are a very, very good team in conference tournament play, the SWAC. Texas Southern, Fairleigh Dickinson in the first 4, I believe. I don't remember when that game is actually. But what I do know is you've got Memphis and FAU. FAU went 31-3 this season, earning themselves a number 9 seed. You've got Michigan State, USC. That could be a really interesting game. And then Marquette against Vermont. Marquette is a dominant team, but Vermont, they are coming in with some momentum. And, you never know in that 15-2 range. So Tuesday, you've got, so Wednesday, it's Texas Southern, Fairleigh Dickinson. So Tuesday, you got Southeast Missouri State, Texas A&M, Corpus Christi, and then Pitt and Mississippi State to follow. Wednesday, you've got Fairleigh Dickinson, Texas Southern, and then Nevada and Arizona State. Are the times out for Thursday? Yes, they are. Ooh, they are. And then on Friday, the Columbus games will start at 12:15. You got USC and Michigan State, and then you've got Vermont and Marquette. That's going to be a really fun game. And then you've got, let's see who plays next, 6:50, Purdue, and then FAU, Memphis to round things out. How about that? That's going to be fun. This is the best time of the year. Looking forward to talking about that. But, of course, this is a Bearcats podcast. So we got to relate it back to Cincinnati, and we will continue on the fallout from Saturday's game, the conference tournament. We'll talk Bearcats spring practice later this week. Russ Heltman will join me for a weekly live room, hopefully this week. And then the NIT, which at the time I recorded this, we didn't know who the Bearcats are going to play in the NIT. So the Bearcats will hopefully get an NIT bid, hopefully accept it and play in it. And we should have a lot of fun talking about that. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. How about for your second listen, you check out our brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball. Experts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton bring you everything you need to know on and off the court. Plus, hear from big-name experts, coaches, and players throughout the basketball landscape. Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Also, this week and next week, top 10, because the Bearcats' time in the American Conference is over. Top 10 football and basketball moments this week, football. So tomorrow in segment 3, Tuesday, top 10. Next Tuesday, top 10 basketball moments. That should be fun. Locked On Bearcats, I'm Alex Frank, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is Locked On Bearcats. Have a great rest of your day, and I will be back tomorrow right here on Locked On Bearcats, on Twitter at Frankie_Natty with 2 N's and an ATI, Instagram, AlexFrankNet_, and email, AlexBFrank@gmail.com. For Locked On Bearcats, I'm Alex Frank. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you tomorrow right here on Locked On Bearcats.